Hi. The reason I'm here is for the same reason that you are here as well. I had some challenging questions in relation to autonomous e-mobility because autonomous e-mobility is so new, except for those who are inventing it. But even for those who are inventing the technology itself is so much at speed that they can't cope with the change. So change is so important, and the autonomous technology by itself is such an interesting topic. We've heard this morning so much of new information in relation to this subject, but where would insurance come into all this? Actually, if it was about a vehicle with 4 wheels driving on the street, the answer is so easy and so simple. But when we start to introduce a new aspect into this particular risk of being on streets, then we need to dive a lot more into the drivers behind it. So I thought I'll start by changing my language. I don't think there's something wrong here. It's just the challenge of understanding what's written. This particular perplexity of understanding what's there on screen is the same perplexity that had led us to be here today to understand what autonomous e-mobility is. According to Khalil Gibran, perplexity is the beginning of knowledge. But the truth is, it's a little bit more than that. Because perplexity derives challenge, and challenge derives research. Research derives information or knowledge, and knowledge derives innovation. Innovation derives creativity, and creativity derives innovation. And innovation leads to change, and change is the constant that we should always take seriously, and we should never ignore. Ignoring change is a very big mistake. It's a risk by itself. And the change from a combustion engine vehicle to an autonomous electric vehicle is a change that we should not ignore. Not today, not in 10 years' time. So, where would insurance come into all this? In reality today, when we are insuring a vehicle on streets, we are insuring science. But what aspect of science? We are insuring physics. We are insuring the physical object which is on the street related to another physical action taking place. And in case of an accident, we also physically interfere in order to resolve the issue and then reach into a settlement somewhere in relation to the financial aspect of that particular incident. But with autonomous e-mobility, science expands. A new layer comes in, the layer of mathematics, the layer of adding logarithmic equations and algorithms into the whole equation, to the whole question. And then insurance companies would come in and say, how can we insure this? Now, it was much easier to identify liability and to identify those at risk. But now things will change. Need to look into other consideration in relation to the science. We need to look into the mathematics of it and everything that is behind it. But before we go into all this, I wanted to let you feel the importance of insurance in relation to its impacts on the economy and on the impact of the business that we are talking about today, which is autonomous e-mobility. So global premiums today, insurance premium, represent something like $7 trillion US. Those $7 trillion US will continue to increase with time. Very rarely they'll drop and then go up again. So we're looking at a very important factor in the global economy, and of which motor insurance represents around 1 trillion. So it's 1 in 7. And can you imagine in insurance you have fire insurance, you'd have a liability insurance, you'd have health insurance, and so on and so forth. And motor insurance alone represents 1 in 7, 1 trillion. So it's a very important factor. Therefore, it's definitely important to dive more into it and try to understand what's going to be the impact in the future. EV global premiums represent today much less than 10% of the global motor insurance premium. So this means that the potential is great. This means that the scale is massive. It's a massive opportunity for insurers, and it is another massive opportunity for the entire industry as well. So let's have a quick look and try to compare combustion engine vehicles to electric engine vehicles in terms of numbers. There's around 1.5 billion vehicles on streets today, of which there are only 40 million at the time of collecting this data. It was only around 40 million vehicles with fully automated functionality, electric vehicles. Whereas if we add the hybrid ones, that will be around 212 or 213 million vehicles, which means there's still a long way to go from a fully automated vehicle into the conventional combustion engine vehicle. And the same thing would apply in relation to insurance, which means insurance companies would still need to look at a massive change from a 9 billion into around 1 trillion of insurance premiums in a year. But if we look at the impact at country level and we try to dive down a little bit more into what's happening in this industry, a lot has been said in the morning, a lot will be said tomorrow, but let's look at this. And actually, even with this particular data that ended in 2022, a few days ago, this information became obsolete. Because in the past 2 years, the number of electric vehicles that have been produced in China alone doubles what has been produced in China between 2010 and 2022. So let's look at this. That's war. That's a very, very big race. So where would insurance come into this, and why would I, Elias Chedid from Seib Insurance, be talking about it here in this forum? Because we need to understand our need at the end of the day. I would bet if any one of you driving a vehicle today on streets is not insured. So ultimately, you have to go back to us, the insurers, and we'll be taking your money. So, however, we'll pay you back in case of an accident. Regulation has become the talk of the town, whether it is in this forum or whether it's in closed doors. In every country that we go to, there is a regulator with eyes on streets, with eyes on people, with eyes on financial institutions, with eyes on new technologies, and trying to put things together, whether locally within a specific state or a country or a jurisdiction or a region or a zone or at global levels. From a risk and liability perspective, this is very important for us because we would need to identify, be able to measure the risks involved, identify liability, revert back to regulation in order to assess to what extent are we going as insurers pay you as a driver who's been in an accident and try to compensate for the loss that you've had. So our team at Seib has done a little research in the same as we've seen this morning. And this research is basically related to jurisdictions around the world that has got some level of regulation in relation to autonomous e-mobility. And this would tell us, this screen would tell us that there's still a lot to be done, knowing that not every single point has a fully comprehensive regulatory framework. There are still elements to build, and there will be mistakes, and we learn from those mistakes, and then we correct them, and then we move forward. This is what's going to happen, and this is what's happening now. So what is the difference between the standard vehicle we drive today, which is ICE, or which is a combustion engine vehicle, and an electric vehicle? Well, there are a lot of commonalities, especially with a level 1 and level 2 electric vehicles. As insurers, we can still comprehend, we can still price it and move forward. What we need to do is to look ahead to the future. So common owner, both vehicles would require to have an operator or an owner at a certain level. There will be a manufacturer involved. There is a software developer involved. At different levels, that's fine, but still, at least these are commonalities. When driving, there are third parties, public entities, etc. However, there is a uniqueness in electric vehicles when it comes to the way we look at it as insurers. Cybersecurity, access to data. And access to data here is an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time. While it poses a risk, it's also a solution. Because in terms of when an accident takes place, a forensic expert would be able to access data, identify causes, reasons, and so on and so forth to build a case and identify the liable party, who is at fault, and to what extent that would need to be compensated. And are there changes around the world happening? Yes. And we've heard in the previous sessions that infrastructure is very important. And in this part of the world, infrastructure has been developing. So for example, in Bahrain, in every new petrol station to be built, and for every existing petrol station, there's a timeline that they would need to allocate minimum number of electric chargers for electric vehicles. In Dubai, newly constructed buildings would have to allocate at least 5% of the parking space to electric vehicles. And in Qatar, the story is big. There's a 2027 strategy, part of the 2030 strategy, in order to transform this particular industry. And already there are over 1,000 buses, fully electric buses, on the streets with all the requirements in relation to charging stations that are needed. So the region, this particular region, is on the move and is monitoring technology and monitoring the need for change and trying to cope with it, trying to balance the several other parts of this particular transportation industry with technology and what is needed and where we're going. So again, at the level of this region, at the level of the GCC, this year, 2024, the Gulf Cooperation Council issued standardized technical requirements for electric vehicles. At least there is now a platform. And then on this platform, every jurisdiction, every country would then have to start building its requirements in order to complete a certain regulatory framework in accordance to its own needs. In Qatar, in Bahrain, in UAE, in Saudi, and so on and so forth. Oman, however, was the leader in terms of making the first step, and that started in 2013. I won't go into too much details of this. I will just take you straight back into my world of insurance. So I had one of our salespeople was telling me, "Oh, you're going to talk at this particular forum?" Yes, it doesn't matter, because what matters is that my client ends up paying me premium, and if there is an incident, if there's a claim, I want the insurance company, which is us basically, to pay. And everything else that happens at the back we don't care whether it's automated, not automated, regardless who is driving this. As long as it's a vehicle, it's insured, I want my client to be taken care of. Actually, this is the reality. So this reality would necessitate us as insurance companies to dive more into the facts, put scenarios, modelize them, and try to understand what's going to happen in the future. There are technology risks, yes. Then we dive deeper into it. Data analysis comes in as another factor in in reconstructing an accident and understanding the requirements in order to resolve this particular incident. And then to be able to identify the liable party. And if we don't have all the information available, then we would need to rely on regulation. If regulation is not available, we then need to rely on legal experts. And the problem would be if we don't have legal experts. What does it mean? This means that there's a lot to be invested in terms of people, knowledge in this particular industry. Who are these people? Starting from the mechanic, who would then need now to rely more on a new science or a new industry, to the lawyers, who would need to defend their clients, to the judicial system, the courts, new laws, new regulations, and so on and so forth. So the change is big in relation to insurance and to you when you're driving a car, and you need to ask yourself, if you're driving an electric vehicle, even if it is semi-autonomous, and I do, I'm one of them, I drive a semi-autonomous vehicle. Am I going to be insured if an accident takes place while on an autonomous mode? If the answer is, I don't know, then I won't buy the insurance policy. I want to make sure that this policy covers me. And this is a very important and vital question. And this is not only related to me as an individual, because this will impact the entire industry. And we're talking about a very important financial, a very important sector within the economy, which is the financial sector. So what has changed and what will change? For insurance companies, they would now look at sensing technologies, artificial intelligence, robotic mobility, would need to consider the infrastructures that are in place and to what extent availability or non-availability of infrastructure is going to impact this insured vehicle which is on the road, and who's going to be at fault. Is it the local authorities because of lack of proper infrastructure, or is it the manufacturer, or is it the developer, or is it the sensing technologies that are related to satellite systems? So is it anything to do with the satellite operator? The questions will drag us into more and more and more complications. But in the United Kingdom, they try to simplify it. And they are, in the UK, they like to go, when it comes to insurance, they're very specific. A car driven on streets, this is basically subject to motor insurance. When it comes to technology, this will become a product. Then this is subject to product liability insurance or to product liability law. So to simplify it, there is an intermediary solution now at the level of regulation. But this will continue to change, and more bills will, of course, come in. The same will happen in other countries. So globally, at regulators' levels, manufacturers, insurers, and consumers, the change is happening at every single level when it comes to this particular industry. So how will your new future insurance policy is going to look like? Your new future insurance policy is going to include cybersecurity risks included into it, articles related to artificial intelligence, location identification systems, data privacy, and so on and so forth. And when a claim takes place, we believe actually, and this is in line with what has been said earlier in the morning, is that with autonomous mobility we'll have less incidents, which means lower frequency. But the issue is with severity, which means that if an incident takes place, it's going to be massive. Especially if we're talking about a question that the gentleman here asked this morning. Are we going, or can we have joint systems driven in the same zone? That is basically a fully automated vehicle and a fully automated transportation system, along with the standard conventional combustion engine vehicle in the same area, in the same zone? Yes. But just imagine me, a crazy driver, bumping into a number of fully automated vehicles, and just imagine the level of the accident that's going to take place. So the losses will be higher, yes, well, level of incidence will be much lower. So there will be changes in claims cost, the way we look at them, in terms of the technology needed in order to be able to assess and to teach our team to prepare them for this coming business. So this is basically how it's going to be like in relation to insurance. I would like to thank you all, and specifically I want to thank our team who had to research most of those, if not more than those, in order to come up with the summary that I have given you, because I was targeting 19 minutes, and I hope I managed to do that. Thank you so much.